Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome to Adventures in History. Today's topic is the Zuck family reunion at Lakeside, Ohio, USA, 1992, Part 2. Lenore Zuck Hughes. I lived with Mary and Frank every summer for 3 months. The interurban ran out there too. I had a ball. Mary paid me a nickel a week to wash dishes and so forth. Marge Freelick. I got 10 cents an hour ironing. Lenore. Mary trusted me to bathe Barbara when I was about 11. I did a darn good job of taking care of that kid. One time Mary came in the kitchen door, and it must have been a funny sight. She stood there and she laughed. I was mad. I picked up the washcloth and wadded it up and threw it at her. That's the last time I got laughed at. John Ray. That'll learn 'em. Lenore. That'll learn 'em. Barbara was a cute little thing. A lot of times there was nothing to do in the house, so I rode on the farm machinery, and I learned a darn good bit about farming too, plows and horses. Harold Freilick. Barbara was a wonderful woman, you know. Lenore. Yeah, she was a nice gal. John Ray. Goodness, you learn all these things you never heard before. Lenore. During that time they promoted an oil well out there. Somebody was selling oil stock. They never found any oil. That was true. Mama went out. She heard Rachel screaming, and she went out and picked her up and headed for Aunt Molly's house. Molly pumped water over Rachel while Mama held her till she got all the bees off Rachel. Then she gave Rachel to somebody and said, Now will somebody get the bees off of me? She was covered with bees. Rachel never had any arthritis or anything of that sort. It's a wonder the bees didn't kill her. She had gotten so many bee stings that it acted as a stimulant. Harold Freilick. Isn't that something else? Lenore. She had been stung by hundreds of bees. Somebody else talk a while now. Harold. This is something that Marge has thought of because it was John Lacey and John, Zuck, and Dale Hughes. I brought Marge in for Christmas celebration at Grandma Zuck's, and I want you to know that those three really did a job on my young bride. Lenore. They did? Harold. You bet they did. Marge. They just made all kinds of snide remarks that you could imagine the day after you're married. Mark Ray. Do you really know the person you're marrying here? Marge. I didn't know most of these people, and there must have been close to 60 people that day, and the family was going in all directions. John Ray. Well, what happened? Harold. They kidded her. Marge. It was just a very uncomfortable day. John Ray. All these people telling you things you just didn't want to hear? Marge. A 19-year-old, and she goes in with all these people? John Ray. You had to leave that very day, didn't you? Marge Freilick. We did for St. Louis. Harold Freilick. I had to be back Monday morning to the Army. Marge Freilick. I rode as far as St. Louis with him. We stayed overnight. Harold Freilick. That was our honeymoon. Marge. I came back the next day on the train and went back to college, to Capital. Finished out the semester, and that's when I went to Texas. John Ray. What were some of the things these three gentlemen told you? Harold Freilick. Oh, nothing malicious. You know, they were just kidding. John Ray. Anything in particular that you recall? Marge Freilick. No, I just remember being very embarrassed at some of the remarks that were made to me, and I thought, what have I gotten myself into? Ha ha. Harold Freilick. This is on top of. John Ray. I know what it was on top of. Harold Freilick. This is utterly amazing. Marge Freilick. It was 5 hours after our shivaree. Harold Freilick. Did we have a shivaree? Oh, man. Marge Freilick. The night we were married was Christmas Eve. Harold Freilick. This is funny in a way. Marge Freilick. Ruth Ann Ray and Dick Kennedy, she was the maid of honor. They were going to be caroling in the church group that night. It was very icy. We were welcome to go out to their house, about 4 miles west of town. Somebody had locked our suitcases and we didn't have a key. We had to break in to open those, and when we got in them, somebody had put coal in them, which didn't help matters. About 3 o'clock in the morning, we woke up. Harold Freilich. And we were sound asleep at that hour, I want you to know. John Ray. You probably passed out. Harold Freilich. I probably had. You're right. Marge Freilich. About 40 people were standing around our bed. Ruth had told them where we were. The whole group had come out to their house. They gave us Dick's overalls. Dick was about 6'4" and weighed about 200 pounds. That's what we wore. They took us out and loaded us in a cattle wagon. They drove us all over Marion. They were going to drop us off at the stockyards about 5 o'clock in the morning. Just about froze. Maggie Huffman was in on this. She wouldn't let them dump us off at the stockyards. So they took us back to Ruth and Dick's and brought us coffee and donuts and took up a big collection. Excuse me. Harold. $79. That got us to St. Louis so Marge could come back to Ohio and I could go on to Texas. Marge. So by the time they all left, it was close to 7 o'clock, and we were due in at Grandma and Grandpa's at 9:30. Harold. They went from the stockyards west of Davis Street on Center Street, clear up to our church, the Methodist Church, right up Center Street, ringing bells and blowing horns and yelling and shouting. John Ray. What a nightmare. Harold. Oh, it was an exciting deal. Marge. Not the way you'd like to spend your wedding night. They did something to every couple that was in that group. Harold. But it ended well because it got Marge and I the train ticket to go to St. Louis. Marge. We had a very nice honeymoon 3 months later. John Ray. It's a wonder you lived through all of that. Marge. Well, yeah. John Ray. Young and strong. Marge. Ha ha, young and dumb. Lenore. Harold, you have a little corn right on your... Harold. I got it. John Ray. That is a splendid dinner. Lenore. Wasn't it good? Harold. It was magnificent. You two cooks are to be congratulated. Steve Lacey. Take it off the rent, John. Harold. We couldn't have done this type of thing over at the restaurant. Marge. You can't because there are other people around. John Ray. I never heard that story about the chivalry routine. Harold. That's the way we started our married life. John. Considering the condition that you were in, your endurance, considering what had happened the previous 24 hours. Marge. I think we decided to laugh and go along with it. There wasn't anything you could do about it. Lenore. John really got Harold drunk. Marge. We got married at 7:30 p.m., and Harold called me at 4:30 p.m. and said, Honey, I don't know whether I can make it. Harold. I had just come to. You passed out in the bathroom, didn't you? And Bob Slaughter in the front room. Steve. This is your father, Peter. John Ray. I know I passed out, but I am unable to describe the location. Marge. I thought somebody was on the kitchen floor. Harold. Maybe that was John. John Ray. I remember waking up in the kitchen with the dog licking my face. Harold. This was in my mother's house. She was horrified. Marge. Everybody that came in had a different solution as to how you sobered these three guys up. Harold. Give him hot soup. Ha ha ha. Marge. To get you ready to go to the church. John. I remember speaking to that minister. Harold. Dr. Ingmar walked into the office about 10 after 7, and the wedding was supposed to start at 7:30. He walked in, and John and I were there. Bob Slaughter wasn't in on that. Ingmar stood up there, and he smelled John's breath, and then he smelled me. He didn't have to smell me. I was still drunk. He said, You are drunk, and I'm not going to marry you. Marge. And our lawyer friend, we should have known then. John. Ha 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 ha. Harold. John stepped in and said, You will marry them. I'll never forget that. Ruth. Is that what you said? John. I don't remember the details, but I tried to be very persuasive. Harold. Oh, you were very persuasive, I'll tell you. I was sick. John. You didn't know this chivalry was coming up after all this. Harold, no. John, ha 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 ha. Harold, I'll tell you another aspect of that. It's not nice to go to the first night that you're married and be drunk, because you really don't have a lot of energy. Marge, ha 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 ha. Harold, no, now that's the gospel truth. You don't. John, I don't doubt it. Marge, well, I think there were about 4 people who would have been willing to take any bet that we wouldn't make it 6 months. I guess we've shown them. John, you certainly have. Marge, number 48 coming up. Harold, you're all invited to our 50th wedding anniversary, you know. We're not going to have it in the winter. We're going to have it in the fall, because winter is a terrible time to have it. Marge, we're going to have either a 49 and a half or a 50 and a half. Harold, I think we're probably going to have a 49 and a half. We'll have it in September. Marge, that's cheating. Harold, I don't care. We're going to have it in September. You're all invited. At the color season in Maine. Marge, how long have you been married? Ruth and John, 42. Marge, and you? Steve and Connie, 35 coming up. Lenore, this is Katie and Jim's 43rd today. Harold, we're following in your grand tradition, Lenore. Marge and I are going to make our 60th. Lenore, we had our 60th anniversary, and we went out to the South Seas Plantation, a real lovely place, and stayed for 3 days. I took pictures of Dale. It was the 8th of June, and the 14th of July, Dale died. So I was never sorry, and have a good time and enjoy. Harold, when Dale was really sick, you called Marge. You called me, but I was in Arizona. Marge called me, and I came back from Arizona to Florida. Lenore, Georgianne was luckily there, and she was going back that Friday. Harold, it's good to talk over family traditions. This is a great family. Marge, you ought to set Lenore down for about 1 week and have her reminisce, because she's it. Lenore, I'm an it. John Ray, you're elected. Marge, I feel so badly that I don't have anybody I can ask about my father's family anymore. Lenore, well, it's a shame. It's a shame I didn't sit down with Mama and really find out some of these things. Ruth Ray, well, that's what Peter has done. He's taped my mother and different people. John Ray, he's been trying. Mark Ray, hi, Peter, this is Mark with Lenore and Seal, and Lenore has some things she'd like to say to you. She'd like to thank you for the stamps. Lenore Zuck Hughes, yes, Peter, hi to you and Alice, and my best wishes and my love. We've had a gorgeous time here this week. We've missed you kids. I do want to thank you for the stamps. And I know Shell Point, where they do these stamp collecting bits, they will appreciate having them. You're doing a great job on all these things that you send us, the Zuck Family Memories collection. I can do nothing else when one arrives but sit down, regardless of anything else that's ahead, and read them completely. And the one that you wrote recently was one of the best I've ever read. I felt like I had talked to you. Mark Ray, which one was that, Lenore? Lenore, that was the one where Peter gave his views of many things. Mark, he has many views. Lenore, it was terrific. I've let many of my friends read these things, the ZFMCs. They're so impressed. It's an unusual thing to do, and we certainly say thank you, thank you, thank you. Mark Ray, Peter likes to hear that, Lenore. He's very much open to thanks and gratitude. Isn't that right, Peter? Lenore, well, we certainly owe you a great debt of gratitude, because many things you have preserved for all of us which would have slipped by the wayside somewhere along the line had it not been for you. I'm interested to hear about the new baby. We'll be delighted to hear all that goes on. Take care, kids. Be good, and God bless you. When we came to Marion last Saturday, we went to the cemetery, and we saw Grandfather Zuck's grave and Tommy's and Helen's and Dale's. My goodness, I can't believe time passes us by so quickly. At any rate, it's a joy to be a part of this family, and I feel a sort of responsibility, because I'm about the only one left who can participate of the original family, and it's such a wonderful thing to be together. I don't know, So many things in life seem to mean a great deal to us until you really begin to sort out. And then you realize that family is one of the most important things that you have. It's a priceless possession. So glad to be here. We've had a wonderful time. We had a potato-tailed dinner tonight. Steve and Marge Freilich did the cooking, and all the rest of us did the enjoying and eating. It was fun. Wonderful, wonderful food. Wish you could have been here with us. Take care. I've been very, very fortunate. I really have. Everything we go through in life isn't pleasant. It doesn't bring you a lot of joy, but you know things happen for a reason. Certainly I've been very privileged. I was privileged to have Dale, my husband. He was quite a person. Mark Ray. Great sense of humor. Lenore. Marvelous sense of humor. Mark Ray. He kept us all laughing. Lenore. He was a pleasant, joyous person. He lost his father when he was only 9 years old, and that makes a big difference. You go without part of your inheritance for care that a father can give you. He missed an awful lot, and here we were privileged to have our father and our mother. You kids are privileged to have your fine parents. You can't count that in anything but great blessings. Mark Ray. Lenore, you said that we all have that sense. Lenore. I mean, if you get in a bad situation somewhere along the line, there will be a solution come to you. It's heaven-inspired also. We appreciate our bodies. We appreciate our minds. We appreciate our family, and that's what it's all about. What's set out for us to do, we should do graciously. Maybe it isn't always what we want to do, but still, or somebody will help us to do it. Mark Ray. It's a nice thought, isn't it? Lenore. It certainly is. Gertrude, my sister Gertrude, read that Bible thoroughly, and it's torn at the edges. And I told Carol the other day, Carol, I'll give you this Bible, because it belonged to Gertrude, and I know it was a great part of her life. Carol said, you keep it and use it. I read it every night before I go to bed. Maybe it's only a chapter, but it's wonderful, and all these underlinings. It just seems as though Gertrude has spoken to me. She's underlined these things in red. Sometimes her pencil slipped, and she got up on the printed line. I really love that. That was Gertrude's legacy to me. She's written in the front of the Bible. Mark Ray. That was the source of her strength. Lenore. She was as fine a person as you'll ever find anywhere. She was quite a gal. It was funny. Dale got so fond of Gertrude. Ruth Ray. Do you want to put it on? Ask questions. Mark Ray. It's on, Mom. Ruth. Oh. Lenore. Gertrude didn't really like to cuddle. She wasn't a great person to come up and kiss you. Dale got so he could put his arm around her. We went out there very often while she lived at that apartment in Huron, Ohio. When we would go in, Dale would go up to Gertrude. He was going to kiss her, and she would say, right here. Huh! I laughed a dozen times about that. She and Helen used to come down and visit us a week at a time. If we didn't have a gab fest then. Dale took that little violin of Gertrude's. We found it in Bill and Barbara's basement. They had painted it white and had framed it as a decorative piece. The bow was there and everything, but they had put a lot of white paint on it. Dale scraped that off 1/4 inch at a time and finally refinished that little violin. That was beautiful wood. It was her very first one, a little one, a 3/4 size. He took the bow and had new horsehair put on it, and he strung it and got a new bridge for it, and he took that up to Gertrude, and she took that little violin, put it under her chin, and played a few notes. She just loved that. I think maybe your parents have that now. My mother ordered that through the Larkin Company for Gertrude when she was a little girl. Gertrude was a fine person. She left a picture of Switzerland for Dale. She was an excellent painter. She had marvelous ideas and ideals. She had a fine family. She could be very proud of all of you, and I'm proud of all of you. Proud to belong to this family. Mark Ray. Was Gertrude still at home when you were in Marion? Lenore. Yes. John Stewart, your father, was born when I first began to teach school. When I had a knotty problem, I'd run over to Gertrude and Doran's. She was the one. I was very, very close to Gertrude and to Mary, my sister, both of them. Rachel and I were close, too. She was younger, and the relationship was different. I adored my older sisters. I was in Mary's class in second grade, and I would not call her Miss Zuck. Forget that. I called her Mary, and I was reprimanded. So then I called her nothing. Ha ha. It's a good way to get out of it, just avoid the issue. I think of these kids in the Philippines. We were there once upon a time. It's a different country. Interesting beyond compare. It's seen a lot of history. My. It's a privilege. I've been so lucky to have found Cecile. She's been a real good gal. Mark. The good Lord takes care of his own. Lenore. That's for sure. And if we remember that, nothing can tear us down. Some parts of this living are pretty hard. It's not only for one person, it's for all of us. We've been given a good heritage, good family, and we're very, very fortunate. Mark Ray. Yes, that's true. Thank you, Lenore. Cecile. Peter and Alice, hello and goodbye. Lenore. I do want to add, Peter, I think your efforts at writing are exceptional, beautifully done. Feel like I had just talked to you, and that is a great talent. More power to you. Gregory Lacey. Hello, Peter. This is Greg. I just thought I'd stop in and say hi for a bit. We're actually getting ready to leave. It's been another quick Lakeside. We've only been here 3 days. You heard my fiancée briefly, Deirdre. She's really terrific. I hope you and Alice get a chance to meet her sometime. We're really sorry we couldn't make it out to the blessing, but we had to go to another wedding, unfortunately, on the same day. I'm still at IBM. I'm a manager now, have 9 people working for me, which is kind of interesting. It's only been 2 months, so I can't really say if I like it or not. So far it's been, but it changes all the time. By the way, I'm sitting here in the birdcage on the front porch of the cottage, which I'm sure you remember well. The weather was good this year. It's been hot and sunny, got a little sunburn. Didn't do any sailing or anything, probably could have or should have. Played some putt-putt. I don't know if you heard yet. Patty got a 39 the first day out, a record for the week. Truly amazing. Said she hadn't played all year. This is her first time. I don't know how she did it. John and Chris and Lisa went over to Put-in-Bay yesterday. Had a good time over there. We stayed here mostly on the dock, relaxed a little. Lakeside has changed a little. They fixed up a lot of things, a lot of new things. New walkways, still looks the same, though overall. They're keeping it in good shape. It's good to see for every year when we come back. On the way back to New York, we're going to stop in Cleveland and visit my friends. So we'll visit them and then head back to Fishhead, New York for the long drive home. We're getting married next September, 1993, but hopefully we're going to try and come out here in August again and relax before the wedding. If you guys come back in April or May, let's see if we can meet up. Head out to Ohio for a weekend or something. Sorry we missed you this year. Hope everything's okay there in Manila. We heard the rains. When we played the tape recorder with the big thunderstorm there, we were having a big thunderstorm here. It felt like we were right there. I just wanted to say hi, and hopefully we'll catch up with you next year. Meet your new bride, Alice. When we get together, we'll be in the middle of planning our wedding, so I'm sure we can trade some stories on that. So have fun, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye. To be continued. So that concludes today's presentation, the Zuck Family Reunion at Lakeside, Ohio, 1992, Part 2. Good luck to you with your efforts in family history if this interests you. Finding, preserving, and sharing old letters, diaries, and photographs, and interviewing elderly relatives while they're alive. Thanks so much for watching. You might consider checking out our website, Adventures in History with Peter J. Ray, at peterjray.com. Thanks again for watching. God bless you. Take care, and I'll see you next time.